Good morning. Welcome to this beautiful summer Sunday morning. We're going to gather with a song. Let's warm the space. Let's get our voices moving and our bodies standing if we're able, and sing to the glory of this morning. Let's sing. Welcome this morning to Southminster Steinhauer United Church. Welcome to those who join us for the first time in a while, online by way of our YouTube presence, or for those of us that are part of this circle regularly. Welcome to this place of spiritual exploration. Welcome to this community of diversity and acceptance, where all ages and all sizes and all colors and cultures, where all sexualities and gender expressions, religions and traditions are welcome. Welcome to this circle where we're invited to open ourselves to compassion, to deep wisdom, knowing that we're each important and valued and make a difference in this world. We meet today on Father's Day. Today's a day when we recognize the gift of birth made possible by our fathers. We honor the fathers in our lives in so many ways. For our birth fathers, for adopted fathers, for those who have, without ties of blood, been like fathers to us. For those who express the spirit of care to others regardless of parentage. For those who express that spirit with children, with animals, with creation. We honor right now the fathering spirit, life giver, caretaker, protector, the sacred masculine in this life. We honor the gift of that spirit to make a difference in our living, and in this expansive and embracing way we share gratitude on this day. Likewise, we come together today with a spirit of gratitude on June 18th, 3 days before National Aboriginal Day. And as we honor our relationships with the Indigenous community, we do so first and foremost by honoring the land. And as we celebrate in this gathering our connection, our relationship, and all that we owe, and also all of our hope in our connection, we respectfully acknowledge that we are located on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional gathering place for diverse Indigenous peoples, including the Cree, Blackfoot, Métis, Nakota Sioux, Iroquois, Deneta, Ojibwe, Inuit, and many others whose histories, language, and cultures continue to influence our vibrant community. And so we gather this day with a spirit of gratitude and knowing that we're called, like all of us on this dear planet, by earth and sky.
We come from the east, where the sun brings the freshness of a new day and the spirit of spring, growth, and newness. We receive the gifts of the east with gratitude.
We come from the south, where water flows, where life bursts forth and flourishes under the strength of the summer sun.
We receive the gifts of the south with gratitude.
We come from the west, where the sun sets on the earth's horizon, calling us all to the quiet curve of evening, the place and time of rest.
We receive the gifts of the west with gratitude.
We come from the north, where the strong wind binds us into community, where we gather in the strength and wisdom and the experience of our elders.
We receive the gifts of the north with gratitude.
It's my pleasure and honor to introduce to you Stanley Salapri, who is a friend of this congregation and a person who has been with us in the past to be with our children a couple of months ago in helping them to talk about Indigenous tradition and sharing some of his traditions with them. And today, we get the opportunity to experience that ourselves. Stanley, would you come up? Stanley is going to share some traditions of the Denetah tradition, which is where Stanley is from, and we'll have a chance to talk a little bit about that with Stanley after we experience one of his offerings today. Do you want to come? You should come to the front, or else we'll all be turning around. Do you want to say something first? Okay.
Good morning. First of all, I would like to say Happy Father's Day to all the fathers that are attending, and the blessings to all the mothers. My name is Stanley Salapri. I come from Meander River, Alberta, Denetah First Nation. As a youth, when I was growing up, my father was a spiritual leader. And one of the things that I was brought up with was spiritual values, which is connecting to the land and to the heavens, I guess. As First Nations, when we say God, we say Great Spirit or grandfathers. Today, I would like to sing a song. It's a prayer song, and it's always a protocol in our traditions to start off with a prayer song. And following that, after the ceremonies, we always do drumming for enjoyment for everybody. I don't mean to have everybody on the floor and dancing, but I just wanted to show you how, as Tenet people, we pray. One of the values that I was raised up, my late father had taught us, myself and my siblings, was to respect other people's beliefs, regardless of our color, regardless of who we are on this earth. Because by the end of the day, we all pray to one God. So those are some of the values that I was raised up with, is respecting and love one another. And I've been involved with TRC working group back at home, where I come from. And one of the theme is forgiving and accepting. I know forgiving is a very, very hard thing to do, but it has to come from us. And with a prayer, anything is possible. So for now, I will do a prayer song, and it's not a very long song, maybe a few minutes, and then at the closing, I will do a drum dance song. All of these songs that I sing is passed on from generation to generation. Some of these songs come from the prophet, and it's we receive these songs through dreams. And as younger generations, we take on those teachings, and we try to do our best to pass it on to the little people that as soon as they're about 5, 6 years old. And I'm very honored to be here, and I will do a prayer song. Merci.
Stanley, I think we'd love. Would you sit with me? Could we just have a conversation? I know the people here would love to hear a little bit more from you, and I wonder if you can share with us a little bit of how you learned to sing and drum. Tell us about how that happened for you. How old were you, and how did that happen?
You know that it's very easy for me to answer. Yeah. Like I said, my father was a spiritual leader, and my grandfather was a prophet. So he taught him all these songs for each ceremonies and for the dance. And we have songs for every occasion, weddings, Easter, and for summer, just for any kind of gathering. I woke up in the morning when I was growing up. I was about maybe 5, 6 years old. My father, on the weekends, Saturday mornings, he would drum really early in the morning. Doesn't matter, it's winter or summer. So I wake up to listening to these songs. And I go to sleep. When I go to big drum dances, big gatherings, I was a little guy. I get tired easy. So I fall asleep listening to these songs. But throughout my teenage years, like everybody experiences, we go through that one time in our lives. I started experiencing alcohol, and with respect to the drum, I didn't start drumming till about 22 years after I stopped drinking. So I took up drumming. Nobody taught me how to sing because, like I said, I lost my father when I was 13 years old. During that time, I learned all these songs. So to me, it just came automatically like that. Yeah. So today I sing songs for enjoyment, for different occasions, for ceremonies. I know all these songs. So I was very fortunate that I grew up with culture and the traditional lifestyle. And today I learned I speak my language fluently 100%. That's my first language. And the English is the one I'm talking to you now. English is my second language. And I'm learning a little bit of Cree too, a little bit of Blackfoot, a little bit of Sioux. Yeah. My wife is a Nakota Sioux from south, and I'm from the north.
That makes things spicy, I'm sure. So, can you tell us just a little bit about? You came to drumming later in life after you went through quite the ups and downs of life. Can you tell us what drumming means to you? Why is it important to you? And tell us a little bit about that.
Drumming is our way of praying. The beat, the sound of the beat of the drum sends our messages to the Creator, which is God. We call it Great Spirit or grandfathers. And when we, as a Dene people, when we're experiencing alcohol and drugs, we cannot use drums out of respect. Because if we do, there's I shouldn't use the word price to pay, but somewhere along the way in our lives, we go through hard times. Whether it might cost us our life, sickness. So to us Dene people, drum is a very, very sacred thing to us. It's just not an object. The drum I have, it's the drum frame is made of cedar wood, and the hide itself, it comes from moose. And so it was made, it was given to me. And when I sobered up 22 years ago, and the elders back home, they told me, your father was a drummer. Now it's your turn to take over. So it's a big step.
So the drum had a significant
Yeah.
place in your recovery.
Yep.
Yeah.
I use it for healing, and I sing for entertainment. I sing for healing, and we use the drum for healing as many people, because it plays a big part in the ceremonies, and so it's a highly regarded back home where I come from.
So I have one other question for you. You mentioned it's Father's Day.
Yeah.
You've told me how proud of a father you are. So why don't you tell us all a little bit about your girls?
Well, first of all, I sobered up 22 years ago, and that was one of my biggest achievement. Whereas before, when I was an alcoholic, I worked just like everybody else, and I did not quite enjoy how things were going, because every 2 weeks was a payday, so I would find myself sitting in the bars, and so I got tired of that. So one day I just decided to stop drinking. When my oldest daughter was 4 years old, and it brought tears to my eyes that I don't want alcohol for her. So I just decided to stop drinking. And I think it was a big positive move, because on June 20th, my daughter is graduating from Bachelor of Commerce from McEwen University after 4 years of studying. And on June 29th, my youngest one, she's graduating from social work program. So I think I got to pat myself in the back because thank you. Because I think I did a really positive move, and I played a role model for them. And myself too, I reconnected myself with my spiritual roots, which is culture. And I still maintain my traditional values, although I work with the Alberta government as a forester. So I kind of balance the both worlds, the pro-Western and my traditional side of it. Yeah. And it's not easy. It's not an easy path. Sometimes I get ridiculed, but it's only words, so words don't hurt. Like my father says, if you listen to criticism and if somebody calls you down, it's just like a smoke. It goes away. So follow your heart. Yeah, that's what he always taught me. Merci. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stanley. I hope you'll drum for us at the end, will you? Perfect. Thank you, Stanley.
I want to share some words that were never written, but were spoken in a moment in time, in a speech that Chief Seattle gave, in a time when negotiations were underway between the federal U.S. government and the traditional peoples of the Pacific Northwest. We have heard these words in a much more poetic and shortened and Hollywood fashion, because the ones that are most familiar to our ear are words that Ted Perry crafted for a script back in 1974 for a film. And those are the very poetic phrases that we've come to recognize. The earth does not belong to us, we belong to the earth, and so on. But in the Seattle Sunday Star in October of 1887, an individual who had heard Chief Seattle speak and who had made some notations attempted to reproduce the words from those speeches and write them down. So these are not Chief Seattle's words, but maybe a tiny bit closer than the words that came to us in 1974. The white chief says that the big chief at Washington sends us greetings of friendship and goodwill. The great, and I presume good, white chief sends us word that he wishes to buy our land, but is willing to allow us to live comfortably. To us, the ashes of our ancestors are sacred, and their resting place is hallowed ground. You of the pale-faced people wander far from the graves of your ancestors, and seemingly without regret. Your religion was written upon tablets of stones by the iron finger of your God so that you couldn't forget. The red man could never comprehend or remember it. Our religion is the traditions of our ancestors, the dreams of our old men, given them in solemn hours of the night by the Great Spirit, and is written in the hearts of our people. A few more moons, a few more winters, and not one of the descendants of the mighty host that once moved over this broad land or lived happily in homes protected by the Great Spirit will remain to mourn over the graves of a people more powerful and hopeful than yours. We will ponder your proposition to buy our land. And when we decide, we'll let you know. But should we accept it, I here and now make this condition that we will not be denied the privilege of visiting at any time the tombs of our ancestors, friends, and children. Every part of this soil is sacred in the estimation of my people. Every hillside, every valley, every plain and grove has been hallowed by some sad or happy event in the days long vanished. Even the rocks, which seem to be dumb and dead as the swelter in the sun and along the silent shore, they thrill with memories of stirring events connected to the lives of my people. And the very dust upon which you now stand responds lovingly to their footsteps because it is rich with the blood of our ancestors. The white man will never be alone because there is no solitude. The land is filled with the spirits of those gone before. So let the white man be just and deal kindly with my people, for the dead are not powerless. These are words remembered and recreated from negotiations between some of the indigenous peoples of the Pacific Northwest and the government officials in the territory that became the state of Washington. We also read from the traditions of another people whose lives were long in another land, reading from the first book of Kings in the First Testament of the Hebrew and Christian scriptures, which along with the book of 2 Kings and 1st and 2nd Samuel tells the story of the nation of Israel, ancient Israel, from its beginnings about 1,000 years before the Common Era until the kingdom was dissolved 500 years later. This story is set during the reign of a king by the name of Ahab, who was a king in the northern kingdom of Israel. And while he was very powerful, he wasn't very good. A fellow named Naboth had a vineyard in Jezreel, right next to the palace of King Ahab of Samaria. And Ahab said to Naboth, "Give me your vineyard so I can have it for a vegetable garden, because it's right next to my palace. And I'll give you a better vineyard in exchange, or if you prefer, I'll pay you its value in money." But Naboth said to Ahab, "God forbid that I should give you my ancestral inheritance." Ahab went home resentful and sullen because of what Naboth said to him. And he lay down on his bed and he turned his face away and he wouldn't eat. And Ahab's wife, Jezebel, came to him and she said, "Why are you so depressed? Why won't you eat?" And he told her. And Jezebel said to him, "You're a king, aren't you? Get up, eat some food, be cheerful. I'll get the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreel for you." So Jezebel wrote letters in Ahab's name, and she sealed them with his seal, and she sent the letters to the elders and nobles who lived in the same town with Naboth. And in the letters she wrote, "Proclaim a fast, and seat Naboth at the front of the assembly, and put 2 scoundrels beside him, and have them bring a charge against him, charging him that he has reviled his God and the king. And then take him out and stone him to death." The elders and nobles who lived in Naboth's town did just as the queen had instructed them, just as it was written in the letter she had sent. And when all had been accomplished, word was sent to Jezebel that Naboth had been stoned and he was dead. And when Jezebel heard it, she said to Ahab, "Go and take possession of the vineyard of Naboth, which he refused to sell to you for money. He's no longer alive, but dead." And as soon as Ahab heard it, he took possession of it. This is a story of conquest, of dispossession, and a story of violence. Do some of you remember the good old days when we pledged our troth to our beloved? Whatever the heck that meant. When we created marriages by saying to each other, from this day forward, to have and to hold, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, until death do us part, I pledge thee my troth. Now, if you're lucky enough not to remember those well-worn wedding words, you're really lucky. Really, what were we thinking? How was it that we thought we could have each other? That a loving relationship with another human being was a commodity that we could possess, something to which we could hold title, something to which we could lay claim. But the domination disorder of our species predates the institution of marriage. Maybe it started with another relationship. Maybe it started with our relationship to that from which we've come and to which we'll return. That relationship to which gravity holds us. To our relationship to that which opens to feed us. To that for which we wage war with one another. For some, it's called natural resources. For others, it's called dirt. For some, it's called soil. For others, it's called land. For some, it's called real estate. For others, it's called property. For some, it's about ownership. For others, it's about stewardship. For some, it's to have. For others, it's to hold. But how we regard that with which we live and move and have our being, how we regard land, determines much about how we live with each other. In this story of a king and a queen and a vinekeeper, we have three competing ecologies. Three irreconcilable understandings of land. Three distinctly different relationships with land. The ancient tale gets told to us as a whole lot of fuss over a little piece of dirt. It starts when Naboth turns down the king's offer of cold hard cash for his vineyard. Because as far as Naboth was concerned, the land wasn't for sale. Not now, and not ever. But like the privileged, like the royals of every time and place, Ahab had no idea what to do when life said no to him. So he stomps home, storms into his bedroom, slams the door, and starts a hunger strike. And in the world of the story, eventually the queen gets fed up with eating alone, and she takes charge of the situation. There he is, face down on his silk sheets, and she lifts the shades and shouts, "What the hell is wrong with you? Get up and put on your crown. You might as well look like a king, even if you're not going to act much like a one. Now turn your attention to the affairs of the state and leave your little vegetable garden to me." As the story goes, one conspiracy, two accomplices, a premeditated murder, and the mission is accomplished. Jezebel hands Ahab Naboth's death certificate with one hand, and with the other, title to the vineyard so he can plant his seeds in time to have fresh local produce. Not just satisfying the 100-mile diet, how about his vegetables being grown a mere 100 meters from his kitchen? For Ahab, Land is a commodity to be bought and sold. I mean, he offered a typical real estate developer's deal. Fair market value or a similar property in exchange for the piece of land he wanted. Land was something for him to be used for the enhancement and the advancement of the human species. In this case, land was his to have in the service of his chosen purpose. Whether or not it was land that thrived on growing grapes doesn't matter, because it was land that was going to be forced to grow vegetables, because that's what Ahab wanted from it. And whether or not it had been the ancestral lands of a people matters not, because its value to Ahab is about what it can produce, not about what it means to another. And for Jezebel, land is an object to be taken, conquered, seized, stolen, expropriated, inventoried, allocated, and possessed for the benefit of some, without regard for the rest. In this case, land is hers to take for the pleasure of the one she's chosen to benefit. Like everything under the sun, it's about winner take all. It's about power and control. It's about the dominance of ownership. But for Naboth, land is not a commodity or an object, it's a subject. It's the subject of a long and cherished relationship. It isn't owned in ways that puts it at his disposal. The land doesn't belong to him. He belongs to the land. For Naboth, the land is his ancestral inheritance. He didn't just inherit it from his ancestors. This land is his ancestor. To sell it would be like selling his mother. The land is sacred and storied. It has its own spirit. It isn't an object from which to derive a benefit. It's a subject with which he has an intimate and a very primary relationship. It's his connection with all that's gone before him and all that will come after him. It's his inheritance. A gift, not to have, but only to hold in sacred trust from generation to generation. He can't sell what he doesn't own, and he can't give what isn't his to give away. It's not his to have, it's his to hold. Human history has reenacted this story again and again and again. There are so many narratives we could tell one another from our histories. Stories of Ahab's, Jezebel's, and Naboth's. It's the all so familiar story of conquest and domination and settlement. It's the tragic history that has shaped our relationship in so many lands, in this and so many other lands, our relationship with our Indigenous brothers and sisters. In this once upon a time story that never happened and is always happening, did you notice the narrator only gives Naboth one line to speak in the whole story? All he gets to say in the story is, God forbid that I should give you my ancestral inheritance. There's deep wisdom in these very few words that are spoken. Just as there is deep wisdom in the indigenous relationships and understandings of many of the world's indigenous with ancestral lands. I wonder how our notions of ownership have distorted not only our relationships with each other, but our relationship with land itself. How our commodification of land as property or equity, possession, hasn't just alienated us from each other, but it has alienated us from a more primal relationship with land itself. How would our relationships be different if we were listening to the claim that land makes on us instead of our laying claim to it? My friend Ruth was faced with this very dilemma. She inherited a parcel of unbroken prairie land in Saskatchewan that had been in her family for at least 2 generations before her. And she describes a moment that began a new relationship with this land in this way. One summer afternoon when I was a young woman in my late 20s, Donna Panay, a Cree woman, and I together walked the land that my grandparents had settled in the early 1900s. Donna and I sat at a fire circle near Buffalo Rock. We visited, we ate. And as the sun was setting, Donna said to me, "You know, Ruth, before this land was your people's, it was my people's. In the acknowledgement of this truth and the painful history of domination of First Peoples and land, we 2 young, idealistic women with such rocky and harsh historical terrain between us decided that we would rename these hills and coulees that are so much a part of both of our stories. According to the rural municipality map, the official name of this place is Loon Creek. But on that day, Donna and I renamed it Grandmother's Hills. For all grandmothers, all ancient and wise ones who care for land. For Ruth and Donna, renaming this land beyond the paradigm of ownership was the beginning of a long journey for Ruth in establishing a new and unique relationship, of deeply loving and fiercely protecting this land for its own sake as a land trust, not for private ownership, land that will never be broken for human benefit or gain. For me, it's been a shining model of living in right relationship with land, of listening to the land and to those who have long been in the land and learning a new way. The experiences of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the stories we heard, the recommendations of its report keep reminding us that we can't keep doing what we've been doing and expect to get a different result. Didn't someone tell us that was the definition of insanity? And the horror of our history teaches us that we can't keep doing what we've been doing and expect a different result. Surely, we can't keep having and holding and expect reconciliation. We've learned a new language with which to frame our marriage vows. We need a new language with which to speak about our relationship with Turtle Island, with this land in which so many seek a home. And as we mark another National Aboriginal Day, it's time for us to consider how it is that we hold what we've come to have. It's time for us to reconsider our relationship with land and with those with whom we live in the land. It's a good thing that we've stopped promising to have and hold each other. But pledging our troth might be essential for right relationship. It means pledging our truth. It means being worthy of trust.
We are together this day to renew our commitment to our relationships with each other and with all creation. May we now share a prayer written by the first Aboriginal moderator of the United Church in the mid-90s. In the mid-90s. It's pretty cool. His name was Stan McKay. May we offer these words that strengthen our intentions and our spirits. We come with thanksgiving for our very breath, the warmth of sun, and the sustaining waters, for life all around us, the plants, soft grasses, and sheltering trees, for the ones that crawl, for those that swim, and those that fly, for the four-legged and the two-legged, all our relations. We celebrate the diversity in creation as reflected in the four winds from the four directions. We especially honor the many peoples with our many gifts for understanding our sacred life on earth, our shared life on earth, We strive to live out the sacred teachings: respect, love, honesty, courage, humility, wisdom, truth. These teachings enable us in harmony to live in harmony with ourselves, with our neighbors, and all the created earth. May it be so. Amen.
I invite you to be seated, and we will be sent on our way today with a drumming song by Stanley. Thank you, Stanley. Let's celebrate this week of National Aboriginal Day, celebrate Stanley's presence, and celebrate our community together with a drumming song.
Yeah.